Children do not need to wear masks in schools across the UK, despite the World Health Organisation advising children over the age of 12 to do so.
But some schools are telling staff and pupils to wear them while moving between classes, including a secondary school in Edinburgh, which reopens today.
Yeah, so should schools in the UK follow the example set in countries like China, Germany and France, which insist on face coverings in the classroom? Joining us now to discuss this is head teacher of Manorfield Primary in East London, Paul Jackson, who thinks masks are a barrier between children and adults, along with Education and Families editor of the Sunday Times, Sian Griffiths, who thinks masks should be mandatory for children over the age of 8, and Afia Adom, who is a parent of an 8-year-old and believes kids shouldn't have to wear masks. Afia, let's start with you, actually, on this, then. So you've got a child as young as 8, and you're not worried at all that your child could come back with the virus, having caught it off. They say probably more likely from a teacher, actually, rather than another pupil. But you're not worried about that at all?
I mean, I'm concerned about Naima going back to school and anybody actually in my family contracting COVID-19 wherever they are. I think children wearing a face mask in school in this case is unnecessary. You're more likely, a PHE study, Public Health England study came out a few weeks ago that said that you're more likely to catch COVID-19 if you're in a home setting rather than when you're in a school setting. That 0.01% of cases actually came from a school setting. So I think that forcing children or trying to enforce children wearing face masks in school, I don't think it's necessary. Perhaps teachers and adults could wear the face mask because, you know, the face mask protects other people rather than protecting yourself. So I don't think it's necessary for the children to be wearing face masks in school. And I think it's another thing for parents to have to worry about. And we know that when it comes to enforcing this is going to be quite difficult for teachers who are already going to have quite a big job when school starts back with social distancing, keeping kids in their bubbles in the playground and in the classroom. And this is another thing for teachers to have to enforce. And it's also another thing, you know, when it comes to enforcing rules around COVID-19, when people are being handed out fines for breaking lockdown, it's usually people that are in working class families, in poorer income families, in poorer areas, and people that were of ethnic minorities that were unfairly targeted. This may be the same thing when it comes to children wearing masks in school. I think it will be another divider. And I also think it's just something else that teachers will have to enforce. And I just don't think it's necessary.
Sian, you think they should be mandatory. I mean, you know, you think about how it's going to be enforced. How would you do that? If somebody hasn't got a mask, you send the child back home? You're constantly saying, where's your mask? Have they got it on properly? Is it a clean mask? Have they got it over their nose? I mean, it could take a whole teacher's day just looking after the issue of masks and children.
Yeah, I think in secondary schools, I think it would be a good idea as children go back and teachers go back this autumn, if face masks were part of the school uniform. I think some schools, there's a school in Cheshire that has suggested a £3 washable face mask is part of the school uniform. And it wrote to parents to say it's a precautionary measure and on balance, it's likely to make the wearing of the face mask in schools likely to make the community safer than if the children and staff don't wear them. And I think where kids are moving around between lessons in big, busy secondary schools where they can't maintain social distancing, I think it's a very good idea. I also think it would reassure both parents who are anxious about children going back to school and also older teachers who are anxious about going back to school, that everything is being done to make the school environment as safe as possible. And it is really important that children do go back to school because their life chances and their mental and physical health is likely to be damaged if they don't go back quite soon. So all of those things. And also, I think schools are just great places to teach children that it is important going into this winter to be responsible about face masks. Youngsters are going to have to wear them on buses. They're going to have to wear them in shops. They're going to have to wear them in museums, in cinemas. And just as they do in schools in Asia and in Europe, I think teaching them now at the start of September how to wear them safely in schools, how not to touch your face too often when you've got them on, all of that is just responsible. And I think it's better to do it now when schools are going back rather than have to bring it in a month's time if there is, God forbid, a second spike.
Paul Jackson, coming to you on that point, you know, at the moment, children over the age of 11, as Sean was saying, in settings like shops, have to wear a face mask anyway. The World Health Organization is saying it's advisable that children over the age of 12 do wear them if they can't socially distance. What are your reasons for not wanting them to be brought into schools?
Well, I'm a primary school head teacher. We've got children from 2 years old up to 11 years of age. And obviously the advice is for those children to not be wearing them. I think there'll be a real distraction for the youngest children that we've got. And I'm not sure that they'll be able to wear them safely. As just mentioned by Sean, the advice is to try to avoid touching your face as often as possible. And I think a face mask that was particularly uncomfortable or ill-fitting would actually have a negative effect rather than a positive effect, because children will be touching their face more often. Obviously, when we come to secondary schools, and that's not my realm of experience, but it becomes a slightly different issue. But I still think, I mean, I've got two children who will be going back to secondary school in a couple of weeks' time. And I still think there's something about the emotional connection with their peers and with the staff they work with that will be missing if they have to wear face coverings in school. I see my own children over the last 6 months, and my son, who hasn't been at school since March, and some of that emotional disconnect that might be there that he desperately needs when he goes back to school. And I'd worry if those young people are emotionally disconnected by wearing the face masks. Obviously, we want to keep everybody safe. We want schools to desperately want schools to return. We want our children back. But I think there are other elements of the economy of society that we can take precautions on to ensure that children can return safely. I mean, we're going to definitely have parents who will be at the school gates and congregating. We'll encourage them to socially distance, them to wear face masks. In the local shops, I've seen people without face masks, and we want people to wear them there, definitely. But in school, let's make it as normal as we can for the young people. And
have any of your teachers said to you that they would like to wear face masks, they would feel safer if they wore a face mask?
The teachers that I've spoken to have said that in actual fact, they'd prefer not to in school. They're comfortable with wearing them outside of school, absolutely. But those that I've spoken to have said in school, they want the children to see their facial expressions. They want the children to be able to, as I say, connect with them. And they feel that that's the big thing that's been missing. Our teachers have been making weekly phone calls to our children, and we've had that dialogue with children, but we haven't had that emotional contact that's so desperately needed for the young people.
Afia, just going back to a point that Sean made, I mean, particularly when you think about secondary school kids, I mean, isn't this about making them feel more responsible for, you know, in society as a whole? We know that young people can spread this virus, although they themselves are at low risk. And in every other part of society, if they go to a public place, or we go to a supermarket, you know, parents are constantly saying, oh, you might have to put your mask on now. Isn't it preparing them for that? And we are in that world now, whether it's coronavirus now, and how long it's going to be around, we don't know. In years to come, we might have more of these viruses. And schools are an educational place, where that's where we're supposed to be teaching our kids and preparing them for wider society.
Oh, I absolutely agree that we should definitely be teaching our children how to be responsible when it comes to things like this, when it comes to the wearing of face masks. And we should also teach them about preparedness and how to deal with these kind of situations. But I think there's a lot of adults out there who need to be educated as well about wearing face masks in shop, about wearing them properly over their mouth and their nose at all times, whether you're in shops, whether you're in public spaces like museums and cinemas and places like that. I think it's very good that we should teach our children about this, but I definitely agree with what Paul said, is that we need our children to have that emotional connection with their teachers that has been lost over these past few months where children have not been at school. And I also think, look, pubs and restaurants, you don't ask people to wear face masks. Obviously, when people are eating, they can't. But the rest of the time, they're in there when people are talking and just conversing when they're in there. They're not wearing face masks. We say that we want children to wear them, adults and everyone to wear them on public transport, but we're not really enforcing it there as well. So yes, we should definitely teach our high school children and all our children over the age of 8 about properly wearing a face mask. But some adults need that education as well.